So what is up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Ezekiel. This here is Snow Farms. We talk rabbitry and more. So if this is your first time coming across this our video or coming across this channel, this here is Snow Farms. We talk rabbitry and more. So if you seek to go into rabbit farming, this is the right platform for you. Okay. All right. So the dry season is here. Okay. The dry season, as always, is here, and there are some few things that we need to put into place to ensure that our animals don't encounter a lot of problems during this weather. So the dry season is normally a period where the livestock farmers encounter a lot of problems. Usually they face issues of scarcity of water and food and all that. So normally during this period, you find that most farmers, most especially the cattle farmers, do sell off most of their stocks simply because they can't afford to keep those large numbers that they have on the farm. There's not enough feed, there's not enough water for them to take care of these animals. Okay, so there are some few things that they don't usually put into place, especially during the rainy season, and so when the dry season comes, they face a lot of problems and they are forced to sell these animals. And mostly you find that when they are selling off these animals, they sell them at a very cheap price. Okay, which isn't very good. Okay, so I'm going to be sharing some few tips under rabbit farming, but however these tips are applicable to other livestock farmings too as well. Okay, but when we start to talk deeper, I'm going to be going deeper into the rabbit aspect, so pardon me for that. Okay, so one way to keep your animals cool is to provide shelter. Okay, providing shelter ensures that your animals are very cool. Okay, because these are the periods where the weather is always very warm and these animals tend to sweat a lot. Okay, so in the case of rabbits that do not have sweat glands, okay, so these sweat glands simply help them to get rid of the heat within their systems. Okay, but unfortunately for our rabbits, they do not have sweat glands. Okay, so rabbits cool down their system through the veins on their ears. Okay, that's how they try to cool down their systems. Okay, if not, if they are not able to cool down their systems, they might end up by getting attacked by heat stroke. Okay, so now I've talked on heat stroke. So I think if you've not heard of heat stroke, you can go and do your research under heat stroke. It's not something that is very good. Okay, it's not something that is very good, so you should strive as much as possible to avoid such occurrences on your farm. Okay, so aside the providing shelter for your animals, okay, another sure thing to provide is to make sure you give them clean fresh water. Okay, now this has always worked for all forms of livestock farming. Okay, it's always a way of refreshing your animals whenever the weather is so warm. Okay, so for your rabbits, that's what we are going to be talking about. So when providing water to your animals, there are several ways in which you can administer water to your animals. Okay, so in our case, to your rabbits, right? And I have two ways in which I administer water to these animals. Okay, and that's what we are going to be talking about. Okay, so we are going to be taking one after the other, and we are going to be discussing into details the pros and the cons under each system that we use. Okay, so now first of all, I'm going to start with the more modern one, which is the nipples have been provided which aid the animals to draw water whenever they are thirsty or whenever they need water. Okay, so now these nipples are specially designed to suit the rabbit. Okay, however, we do have cattle nipples, we do have pig nipples, we do have chicken nipples and all that. Okay, so depending on the animal, the nipple has been designed to suit the animal. Okay, so now these nipples are being designed for rabbits. Okay, it's very easy for these animals to draw water simply because it has been designed to suit the animal itself. Okay, so now these nipples are being connected to tubes, then straight to the water source. Okay, so the water is in the tubes, and when the rabbit touches the nozzle of the nipple, water starts to flow. Then that's how they take in water. Okay, so that's where the automatic sense of operating comes in. Okay, so that's why mostly for large scale farmers, they do not use the other system, which I'll be discussing later on. Okay, they tend to use the nipple system simply because it's much easier. That's one advantage of it. It's much easier because when you fill the buckets of water, that's the main water source. Once you fill the bucket of water, it automatically distributes the water to the whole rabbitry in your farm. Okay, so it's very, very easy. So we are going to be talking under the advantages of the nipple system. Okay, so I've already mentioned one, which is the ease in using it. Okay, so it's very easy to use. You simply just connect your nipple tubes to the various compartments in your cages, and what you do is that you fill the buckets of water, which is the reservoir. You fill it with water, then automatically the water gets distributed to each and every single cage in your rabbitry. Okay, so now the very second thing is that it saves time. Okay, the second thing is that it saves time. Now you realize that for the second system, which will require the worker or the farmer to manually go around, clean the containers or the clay pots and fill it with water, it will take him or her much time as compared to the nipple system, because the nipple system, what you simply do is to just clean the container, fill it with water, then the whole rabbitry gets the water. Okay, so now it saves time for the worker to go and do other works too as well. Okay, so now the third one, which is it saves spillage of water. Okay, so now you realize that when you're using containers and clay pots, the tendency of you spilling water in the rabbitry is very high, simply because you have to fetch, then you fill. Okay, so in the process of filling in the clay pot, you may spill some water, which would make the place very wet. And remember, wet environments for when the floors are very wet, it's not very good for your rabbitry. Okay, remember, you should always keep your rabbitry dry. Okay, when it comes to sanitation, make sure your rabbitry is clean and dry. Okay, don't make it wet, because there will be flies running around, flying around and all that. Okay, and they can easily pass on diseases and other infections to bacterial infections too as well. Okay, so this system ensures that there's no spillage. Okay, once you make your installations and your connections properly, and there are no leakages in the tubes, or there are no leakages in the nipples and all that, okay, the tendency of you encountering water spillage in your rabbitry is very, very minimal. Okay, and that's an advantage that I've seen that it's very good. And once you take advantage of the nipple system, you are most likely to eliminate the aspect of water spillages in your rabbitry. Okay, so now the very last thing I would be touching under the advantages of the nipple system is that it's very economical. Okay, so when we talk financially, it's very economical. Okay, so now let me explain what I mean by that. When you go to buy a clay pot, it's much cheaper because you are buying a single clay pot. Okay, but once you are able to buy the nipples, and you're able to buy the tubes, okay, the tendency of you going to buy more tubes is very low. Maybe once in a while you would go to buy a nipple to come and change, because simply because the nipple system use a spring. Okay, the mechanism that it uses is a spring. Okay, so once the rabbit presses on the nozzle of the spring allows the water to flow through. But once it let goes of the nozzle, the spring will push back the nozzle to close the hole where the water normally passes through. Okay, so once in a while you would be changing a nipple, but not often. Okay, maybe you may be changing a nipple in like 2 months time, which is very, very economical if you ask me. Okay, as compared to the containers or the clay pots. Okay, now you find that the clay pots or the containers, the rabbit can spill the water. Aside spilling the water, it will just be biting and scratching. You know rabbits, they usually have the tendency of biting and scratching and doing all that. Okay, so they end up by destroying the clay pots, so which means you have to go buy another clay pot to come and replace the broken one. Okay, so that's where the economical sense of administering the nipple system to your inculcating the nipple system to your way of administering water to your animals. Okay, the disadvantages of the nipple system. Okay, remember, everything has its advantages and disadvantages. Okay, and it's fair it's fair that I make you know the disadvantages that the nipple system equally comes with, okay? So that when you decide to go in for the nipple system, you bear it at the back of your mind that you do know that it has some drawbacks, okay? So when you start using it and you start encountering some problems, you know what to do, okay? So let's quickly deep dive into the disadvantages of the nipple system. So now the very first thing is that the nipple system is once you administer water to the animals, every single animal gets the water, okay, which is good, don't get me wrong, which is good. But in a way, once you administer the water and the water happens not to be clean, okay, and the water happens not to be clean, each and every animal is going to drink that unclean water, okay? So that's one disadvantage that it comes with, okay? So if the container is not clean and you maybe the worker didn't really take notice of the container, he didn't really clean the container before filling the water, it means that the dirty water which you filled in the container is going to be administered to every single animal on your farm, okay? And now it's going to pose problems for your animals, most especially for your winners. Remember, these bunnies are still growing up and their immune system is not strong enough to withstand some bacterial infections and all that, okay? So once they drink in dirty water, it's going to affect them negatively, okay? So now the second one which we are going to be talking about is that it does not give you the chance to medicate your animal, okay? So let's assume you are using the nipple system, okay, and an animal happens not to be fine, or it happens not to be is sick. An animal happens to be sick, okay? So it means that you would have to isolate that animal. Aside isolating the animal, you'd have to disconnect the nipple system, then bring in the clay pots or the containers and all that, okay, in order to medicate the water for the animal, okay? If it is antibiotics that you are putting in the water, coccidiostatins and all that, so it means that the nipple system is not going to permit that, because the main source of the water is the container, okay, which distributes water to every single animal. But remember, the animal that is sick needs medication, okay? The animal that is sick needs medication, and you can't medicate the whole water and supply to even the healthy ones, okay? It's not going to work. So that's another disadvantage that the nipple system comes with. The third disadvantage of the nipple system is that it tends to be very tedious when it comes to cleaning the nipples and also the tubes, especially the tubes themselves, okay? So now you realize that once you start using the nipple system over and over, there is this algae, yes, I think it should be algae, some greenish substance that starts to form in the tubes, okay? So now these tubes come in different colors, okay? We have black, we have the transparent one, which is always very obvious for you to see the green coloration of the algae once it starts to form, and we have the blue one and all that. But regardless of the color itself, with time, the greenish algae starts to form in the tubes, okay? And it becomes very difficult to get rid of this algae in the tubes, okay? So now it poses danger to your animals. Once this algae is in the water and you keep on passing water through these tubes, the algae is going to supply to the animal and the animal is going to drink it without even knowing, okay? Even if you clean the container, then you fill in clean fresh water and you don't clean the tubes themselves, okay, it means that indirectly the water is still going to be contaminated, okay, and your efforts have not even been recognized, okay? The effort in trying to clean the water has not been recognized, okay? So now what I find is that people tend to use I think apple cider vinegar, although I've not used it on my farm, but I'm trying very hard to see if I can buy some, then I'll start using them, because my nipple tubes too have started forming the green algae in them, okay? So now people recommend apple cider vinegar, which helps in cleaning the tubes, okay? So what you do is that you mix the apple cider vinegar with the water that you are feeding to your animals, okay? Now bear in mind that apple cider vinegar is not harmful to your animals, okay? it's not harmful to your animals. It's actually the other way around. It's beneficiary to your animals, okay. And alongside, it cleans the tubes, okay. Whilst the animal taking the water containing apple cider vinegar, it equally cleans the tubes of all the algae that have been formed over the period of time, okay. And another way of cleaning the tubes is that people normally say you pour in hot water into the container, the main container, then the hot water is distributed through the cages, okay. So it means that once the hot water is in the tubes, it's going to clean the tubes, okay. Remember, these algae are living things, okay. These algae are plants, or I don't even know. You can let me know what species or family the algae belongs to, but all I know is that it's a living thing, okay. It's a living thing, and the hot water, it's going to kill it, okay. So one sure way of getting rid of the algae in the tubes is to put in hot water to ensure that these plants get killed and they get flushed out of the system, okay. So now, whilst you are administering this, whilst you are putting in the hot water into the container, it means your animals will not be taking water, okay. So what you simply do is to disconnect the nipples, okay, to disconnect the nipples from the cages themselves, to avoid the animal trying to draw water whilst the hot water is still there, because it might be harmful to the animal. It might burn the tank of the animal, okay, and we don't want that to happen, okay. So that's one sure way of getting rid of the algae in the nipple tubes, okay. So these are some of the disadvantages that the nipple system poses to your animals, okay. So it's good you bear this at the back of your mind when you are going in for the nipple system, okay. So when you're going for the nipple system and algae starts to form, you know what to do. I've already taken you through it, okay. So now quickly, let's move to the other system, which I've already mentioned in my explanation earlier on, which is the containers or the clay pots, okay. So now I find that this is the very common one, okay. Even if you can't get access to the clay pots, people still resort to containers and all that, okay, and it works perfectly fine, okay. So now we are going to be talking about the advantages that it brings to the animal, okay. Then later on, we are going to be discussing the disadvantages that it brings to the animal too as well. So now the very first one that we are going to be talking about under the clay pots system or the containers is simply that it does not require any form of training for the animal to take in water, okay. So now let me refer you back to the nipple system. You realize that for the nipple system, the rabbit will have to be with the nipple for some time, okay. Especially for me, when I started using the nipple system, my animals were not acclimatized to the nipple system. So what I did was that I kept the containers and I filled them with water, and I equally connected the nipple system and it was equally filled with water. So from time to time, the animals would, you realize rabbits are very inquisitive animals. So simply, once they see this nipple protruding their cage, they like to experiment, okay. So in the process of trying to trying to quench their curiosity, they end up by touching the nipple and water flows out. So from time to time, they go to touch it and they take water, okay. And then I start to reduce the quantity of water in the containers, okay. So they refer to the nipple system, and as time goes on, they just prefer the nipple system simply because it's something that is very interesting to them, okay. You realize these animals are very playful animals, okay, and touching a nozzle and water flowing out is simply something that is very interesting to them, and they just quickly switch to the nipple system, okay. So now with the container system, you realize that the rabbit doesn't require any form of training, okay. So it simply just goes, then it drinks its water, then gets back to its cage and it's fine, okay. Now, even if your animal is not being trained under the nipple system, we still do very well with the container systems, okay. It doesn't need any form of training to be able to drink water from the containers, okay. It's just an open container where it simply goes to drink water, and that's it, okay. So now let's move to the second advantage of the containers, advantage of using the containers to the nipple system, okay. And it is that it's mostly very ideal for the winners, okay. Why? Simply because remember, these winners are there are several bunnies that are being put into a cage, okay. There are several bunnies that are being put into a cage, and it allows several bunnies to drink water from the same container. Okay, now you realize that with the nipple system, I mostly refer you back to the nipple system simply because it's a clear way of showing you the differences between the two. Okay, so now with the nipple system, you realize that once an animal is drinking water, it would have the second animal will have to wait for the first animal to finish, then the second also moves in. Okay, so in that sense, even if there are like 20 animals in the cage, okay, they would have to take the water one after the other, which is not going to be very good for the animals. Okay, so and it's going to lead to constipation. Remember, if they happen to be animals that are bigger than the others, they are simply going to block the access to the water, and they are simply going to be there and they are going to be taking water, whilst the much smaller ones won't get access to the water. Okay, which is not good for the animals. So now this is an advantage for the container system simply because it's a big container which allows several animals to drink water at the same time. Okay, well, you might take this as not an advantage, but for me, I take it to be an advantage simply because these winners are very delicate and we need to take our time and ensure that they grow to the rightful age so that we can sell them off and get our profits. Okay, so don't give chances. Okay, so now the third one, so now the third advantage of using containers is that it allows for medication. Okay, now you realize that almost every advantage of the container system is a disadvantage to the nipple system. Okay, so now it allows for medication. Every cage has a container where water is being served to the animals. Okay, so if an animal happens not to be very well, happens to be sick, okay, if an animal happens to be sick, it means that the medication is going to be put into the drinking container of that particular animal and not the general population of the animals you have on your farm. Okay, so it means that cage 1 is going to be medicated, cage 2 is not going to be medicated. Okay, that's if cage 1's animal is not feeling well. Okay, so now this is an advantage that the container system equally comes with. Okay, another advantage of the container system is that it allows for easy cleaning. Okay, you realize that with the nipple system, it was very tedious to clean the nipple system because it will require even you going to buy some other stuffs to come and help in cleaning. Okay, so with the containers, you don't basically require apple cider vinegar to clean it. However, you can use it in your cleaning process. Okay, but in the absence of this apple cider vinegar, it's a container. Okay, and it can easily be moved from place to place. Okay, so you can simply remove it from the cage, you can wash them, dry them in the sun, then you refill it back with water to the animal. Okay, so it allows easy cleaning. Okay, so in case of it being dirty with the containers, the algae equally forms in the containers. Okay, let me mention this to you. The algae forms in the nipple tubes, it equally forms in the containers too as well. Okay, so if the water is being kept in the container for some time, you realize that the green pigmentation will start to form mostly in the edges of the container. Whether it's a container or it's a clay pot, you start to find the green coloration, okay, of the algae in the containers or the clay pots. Okay, so it means that with the containers, it's much easier to clean. Maybe you can get a sponge or something of that sort to help you in getting rid of the algae in the containers. Okay, so now this is very beneficial once you are using the containers or the clay pot systems. Okay, advantage of the container system is that it ensures that the water is very cool. Okay, it ensures the water is very cool, most especially to the clay pots. Once you are using the clay pots to administer water to your animals, that the clay pots are made of clay. Okay, so they tend to preserve the temperature of the water. Okay, they are naturally very cool. Okay, so it ensures that the animal has access to cool, clean water. Okay, so now let's move to the disadvantage of the container system. Okay, so now we've talked severally on the benefits of using the container system, but however it equally has disadvantages, which is what we are going to be deep diving right away. Okay, so the very first one is that it's very easy for the water to be contaminated. Okay, so now let me bring you to the scenario where the container system or the clay pot system is being used for winners. Okay, now you realize that these winners go to dip in their mouth into the water to draw water. So in the process of drinking the water, maybe food particles and all that would drop back into the water. Okay, and once this sediment starts to settle in the water, it creates a very bad smell for the water. Okay, you realize that you can fill in water the very morning, then in the evening time you realize that the water is already contaminated and it's not smelling very nice. Okay, which means you would have to replace the water, then fill in water again. Okay, so this tends to increase the work labor on the worker, or maybe the farmer, in the case of if it's the farmer himself or herself. Okay, it tends to increase the workload on him or her. Okay, so you would have to constantly refill the water and all that. Okay, so now the second disadvantage then is that the spillage is very high. Okay, the chances of the water being spilled by the animal is very high, most especially when it comes to the dose. Okay, in this case I'm going to be referring to the dose. Okay, now once a doe is on heat, okay, once your doe is on heat, you usually find that if a container is in the cage of the animal, it's going to spill it and turn it upside down. Okay, that's usually a sign that your animal is on heat. Okay, so in your case of you using containers to fill water and give to your animals, it means this particular doe is constantly going to be spilling the water. Okay, which is going to make the place very wet. Okay, and remember, once the place is wet, it's going to give room for bacterial infection. Okay, and remember, these are things that pose dangers to the farm at large. Okay, so it means that you would constantly have to be sweeping out the water and all that. Okay, that's if your place is cemented. Okay, if the place happen not to be cemented, then I think it should be much better, or it should be much lesser as compared to if the floor of the rabbitry has been cemented. Okay, in my case, the floor of the rabbitry has been cemented, so whenever there's a spillage, the water basically just stays at one point. So it means that it will require my presence to come and clean the place. Okay, to keep the place nice and dry again. Okay, so this poses a problem to us rabbit farmers that use containers to administer water to our animals. Okay, one would be that is time consuming. Okay, so now you realize that with a nipple system, it's very easy. Once you fill in your water, you are basically done. Okay, and the time is spent, the time spent with the nipple system is much lesser as compared to the container system. Okay, so it means that with the clay pot system or the container system, you would basically have to go cage by cage, okay, to administer water to the animal. Maybe you would have to wash, then you have to refill back and put into the cage. Okay, so it means that you are going to be moving in cage by cage in order to attend to each and every animal. And if it happens that you have a large quantity of these animals, it means it's going to be taking up much of your time. Okay, and now the very last disadvantage of the container system is simply that it's not very economical. Okay, or let me just say it's not economical. Okay, so let me bring you to a scenario where you are connected to the Ghana water grid. Okay, if you happen to be connected to the Ghana water grid, so it means that you have to be using larger quantities of water, okay, at your farm. So it is basically just going to be wasted. Okay, the water that is going to be administered to your animals will constantly be wasted. Okay, so it means it's going to be increasing your water bills and all that, which is not very economical to the farmer. Okay, now I would always stress that, as farmers, we strive very hard, okay, to reduce on our expenditures. Okay, once you are able to reduce on your expenditure, maybe it can translate to your pricing. Okay, maybe, who knows, it can translate to your pricing, because you'll be able to reduce the prices of your animals for your clients, your customers, to be able to afford more. Okay, so these are some of the advantages and disadvantages that the nipple system and also the container system use. Okay, maybe you know of any other system of administering water to your animals. Okay, now I know most of you will be expecting me to give a verdict as to whether to be using the nipple system or be using the container system. Okay, and I'm not going to give you a straight answer and say go by this or go by that. Okay, simply because it's going to depend on the situation in which you are. Okay, so now if you have the financial muscle to buy the nipple accessories and start using the nipple system, that's fine. But if you don't, please stick to your container system. It still works perfectly. Okay, there are most farmers that are using these container systems and they are doing very well. Okay, so now it's basically going to boil down to your management systems, okay, and your commitment. Okay, always keep, the simple rule is to always keep either the nipples or the containers clean. Okay, to keep either systems always very clean. Okay, once you do this, I think your animals will always be in their best of health, and there will be no problems they will be encountering when it comes to administering water to your animals. Okay, so I would like to say thank you very much for your support since we've started this channel. You guys have been doing so well. Okay, and I would like to say thank you very much for supporting us. Okay, if you've not subscribed, please, I'm encouraging you to go and subscribe to the channel. Okay, this channel is an educative channel and it will be very good to have you on the family. Okay, we are almost 1,000 subscribers and I'm still encouraging new farmers, new viewers, new subscriptions to keep on coming. Okay, please join the family and let's grow. Okay, it's always a joyful moment to find a new subscriber coming in and also coming in the comment section to share his thoughts or her thoughts with us when it comes to rabbit farming. Okay, and I think that's how we grow, right? So thank you very much and have a nice day.